Before the foundations of the earth were laid, he already had a plan. We stand now, but at the divine threshold of something greater. August is not just another month, it is a prophetic portal. And if you are breathing, if you are hearing these words, it means you're a part of it. Heaven has already spoken. The alignment is not random. The time is not accidental. God said, it's all planned. You were not born in this hour by chance. You are here because August was waiting for you. They told you August was just another page on the calendar, but that's a lie from the realm of the natural. Because in the divine, there is no such thing as just another month. Every moment you breathe is part of a divine sequence, a holy rhythm orchestrated by the one who is not bound by time but holds it in his hand. While man uses calendars to mark days, God uses days to mark destinies. He does not observe time the way we do. He defines it. He does not consult clocks. He has commands, kairos, those appointed, set apart, prophetic moments when heaven intersects earth and eternity whispers, now. August is not man's idea. It is God's design. And in the divine pattern, the number 8, the number of August, represents new beginnings. Think of it, 7 is the number of completion, but 8 says the completion is over. Now comes the commencement. You are not entering a repeat of last season. You are stepping into something unprecedented, something appointed, something that has never happened before. And for the one who has grown weary in the waiting, hear this with all the fire in your spirit. God has not been late. He has been precise. Your tears did not fall outside of his timeline. Your delays were not detours. They were divine pauses for preparation. And while you've been wondering if God forgot the schedule, he's been aligning you for something so specific, so sacred, that only a God who authors time itself could orchestrate it. Consider Joseph, son of Jacob, a boy with dreams bigger than the space he occupied. He was given visions of leadership, of greatness, of favor. But instead of elevation, he was thrown into a pit. Instead of royalty, he wore chains. Instead of fulfillment, he experienced delay after delay. Yet God never forgot the dream he planted in him. While Joseph waited, God was orchestrating a famine. While Joseph was imprisoned, God was stirring Pharaoh's dreams. And when the appointed moment came, not a day too early, not a second too late, the boy who was forgotten by men was remembered by heaven. In a single day, he went from prisoner to prime minister. That's what divine timing looks like. And just like Joseph, you've been waiting in places that don't look like the promise. But God says, the stage is set. The clock of heaven is striking now. This August, there are things being prepared that you can't see, but they will meet you as you walk forward in obedience. Don't measure your life by earthly calendars or deadlines. Measure your life by prophetic alignment. What man calls delay, God calls development. What the world calls an end, God calls a beginning. Your August is not a coincidence. It is our convergences. Let me tell you about Alicia, a single mother who lost her job in July and felt like her world was caving in. She cried out to God, wondering why the door slammed shut right before school started for her children. But instead of panicking, she prayed. Instead of rushing into the first available job, she waited on God's voice. August 3rd, she was offered a position she didn't even apply for, double the salary, fully remote, and with benefits she had never received before. The timing didn't make sense until it did. And when she testified, she said these words, Peter, had I gotten a job in July, I would have missed this one entirely. That's how God works. He's not bound by our sense of urgency. He doesn't operate in panic mode. He waits for the fullness of time. And when the fullness of time comes, everything aligns. There is an appointed time for your breakthrough, and you are walking straight into it, not by striving, but not by surrender. Your life is not on the world's schedule. Your August is not built on man's plans. It is set by divine ordinance. Remember, even Jesus came in the fullness of time, not when the world thought it was convenient, not when the people were ready, but when the plan of heaven had reached maturity. He was born at the precise moment prophesied generations before. And if God didn't miss the hour for his own son, he won't miss yours. As every breath you've taken has been leading you here. Every battle you fought has been preparing you. Every closed door, every sleepless night, every no that broke your heart, they are all part of this orchestration. This August is not a repeat. It is not a rerun. It is a reset. Heaven is declaring a new beginning over your life. But you must shift your focus from your watch to his word. Don't ask God when anymore. Start asking him, what now? Because he's already written the when. It's August. It's now. It's planned. So lift your eyes from the calendar and set them on the cross. Shift your gaze from the clock and anchor it in the kingdom. Because the author of time has marked August for your activation. It's not chaos. It's coordination. It's not confusion. It's choreography. And even when it looks like things are falling apart, they are actually falling into place. God said, it's all planned for the start of August. So don't second guess what he has already spoken. Just don't measure divine movements by human metrics. Don't let the enemy convince you that you're behind. You're not behind. You're in divine alignment. This is the time. This is the turning. This is your moment. And it's not too early. It's not too late. It's exactly on time. You thought it was random, didn't you? The delay, the detour, the disappointment, it felt like chaos. Like heaven had fallen silent and the roadmap of your life had been torn to pieces. But listen closely now, there's nothing in your life has been accidental. Of every tear you cried was counted. Every no you received was noted. Every door that slammed in your face wasn't just closed. It was divinely sealed by the hand of a Father who knows what's behind it. What you saw as a setback was actually strategy. What you perceived as rejection was in truth redirection. You see, God does not work on the surface. He is not a casual observer. He is the architect of your timeline, the author of your process, and the keeper of your every breath. From the very beginning, before you ever took your first step, He already drew the map. And while you've been walking through valleys that felt like punishment, what's really been happening is fresh preparation. There are things you were not ready to receive until you were broken. There are blessings that would have destroyed you had they come too early. There are platforms you could not have stood on until your pride was stripped away. So God, in His mercy, not His anger, hid you. He covered you. He delayed what you thought you were ready for, not to hurt you, but to just protect you from yourself. Say, let me take you back to the life of Moses, a man born with a deliverer's call. From the moment of his birth, God had a plan to use him to rescue his people from slavery. But Moses didn't enter his purpose in the palace. He entered it in the wilderness. After killing an Egyptian in a burst of self-righteous justice, Moses fled Egypt and spent 40 years on the backside of the desert tending sheep. 40 years! That's longer than many people's whole careers. And from the outside, it looked like Moses had missed his moment. But what man called exile, God called as enlistment. It was in the wilderness that Moses learned humility. It was in the silence that he learned how to listen. It was in the obscurity that he was forged into a leader. And when God finally spoke through the burning bush, Moses wasn't behind schedule. He was right on time. The calling had always been there, but now the character could carry it. And so it is with you. You've been walking through dry places, wondering if God abandoned the blueprint. But He hasn't. He's just been building you in secret for a stage that will soon be seen. The wilderness was not wasted. It was part of the plan. I think of a man I met named Joshua, not the one in Scripture, but a real man with a very real story. For years, he poured his heart into a nonprofit organization, building it from the ground up to serve underprivileged youth in his city. He sacrificed time, money, relationships, and dreams. He did it all for the vision God gave him. But just as things started to grow, he was suddenly forced out. Betrayed by people he trusted, accused falsely, and left with nothing. Everything he built was taken from him in an instant. For 3 years, he struggled. He worked odd jobs, lived with friends, and kept asking God why. But in that hidden season, something began to shift. He reconnected with his purpose, not the organization, but the heart behind it. He met people who sharpened his vision. He developed new skills he never had time to learn before. Then, out of nowhere, a city leader called him and offered him a government-backed role to direct city-wide youth programs on a scale far greater than his original nonprofit. The very thing that felt like loss was actually as a launches. When Joshua told his story, he wept, not because of the pain, but because of the perfection. Had I stayed where I was, he said, I would have missed where God was taking me. And that's the truth we all have to swallow. God's plan doesn't always feel like promotion. Sometimes it feels like breaking. But the breaking is always the birthing of something greater. The enemy wants you to believe you're off course. He whispers lies that say, you missed it. You messed it up. You'll never recover. But that's not the voice of your shepherd. That's the voice of your accuser. Because the truth is this, you are still on schedule. Hey, the pain, the pause, the path you never planned. It's all part of the design. When God said, it's all planned for the start of August. He wasn't just talking about events and dates. He was talking about you. Your restoration, your revelation, your redemption, all of it. And He's been aligning it all behind the scenes even when you couldn't feel it. Like a symphony being composed in silence, your life is about to erupt in purpose. What didn't make sense is about to make sense. What hurt you is about to be healed in public. The threads of confusion are being woven into a garment of glory. So don't curse the process. Don't despise the detour. Don't resent the silence. Because God was not punishing you. He was preserving you. And now you are not just stepping into August. You are stepping into a manifestation of divine intent. You are stepping into a chapter that was written in heaven long before your feet touched the ground. What looked like a delay was really a divine setup. And the stage is now ready for the curtain to rise. Your story is not over. It's just been hidden until now because God said it's all planned us. There's a weight in the air right before the breakthrough comes. A stillness that feels almost unbearable. A silence that stretches long and deep, pressing against your faith like a test of fire. And that's where most people stumble, not because God hasn't spoken, but because they can't hear him anymore. But hear this clearly. But again, the silence of God is not the absence of God. Just because heaven goes quiet doesn't mean heaven has stopped working. In fact, some of the most powerful moves of God happen in the moments when you hear nothing, see nothing, feel nothing, but continue to believe anyway. Before the resurrection of Jesus, there were 3 days of complete silence. The cross had been raised, the tomb had been sealed, and for all who followed him, hope seemed buried. Saturday, the day between death and life, was a day of confusion, of grief, of despair. No angels, no miracles, just silence. But just because it was silent doesn't mean it was still, because while man was mourning on earth, Jesus was conquering in the depths of hell. He was moving in silence, breaking chains that man didn't even know existed, disarming the powers and principalities that had held dominion for generations. And when Sunday came and the stone rolled away, the silence broke, not because God had just started working, but because what he had already finished in the dark was now about to be revealed in the light. That's what's happening in your life. You think nothing's happening, but in the spirit, walls are crumbling, chains are snapping, and doors are unlocking, all while you wait in what feels like the void. It's that in-between space faith is truly forged. Not in the noise, not in the fire from heaven, not in the clear, open miracles, but in the quiet where there's nothing to hold on to except the whisper that once was. That's where Abraham found himself after God gave him a promise and then stayed silent for years. He was told he would be the father of nations, yet time passed and his wife's womb remained barren. Decade after decade, he waited with no new word, no new sign, just silence. But the word says he did not waver through unbelief regarding the promise of God, but was strengthened in his faith. How? Because Abraham understood something most people miss. God often prepares in silence before the shift. It's the quiet before the storm, the stillness before the shout, the deep breath before the trumpet blasts. And when the promise finally came in the form of Isaac, it was not just a miracle. It was the manifestation of faith matured through silence. That same pattern is playing out in your life right now. You prayed, and now it seems like heaven has shut its doors. You believed, and yet everything feels like it's standing still. But what you call inactivity, God calls incubation. He's not ignoring you. He's forming you. He's not punishing you. He's preparing the ground for the promise. I met a woman named Rachel who shared her testimony at a small gathering in a church basement, and her words have never left me. For over a decade, she prayed for her son who had wandered into addiction, darkness, and rage. She fasted, she pleaded, she interceded, but nothing changed. In fact, things got worse. He cut off contact. He told her to stop praying. There were nights she wept so hard her voice gave out, but she never stopped. Through 10 silent years, God didn't give her one dream, one sign, or one vision. Nothing. But she clung to the last word she had from him, "Your son will live and not die." One day, after nearly giving up, she received a call. It was from a rehabilitation center. Her son had checked himself in, unprompted, after a violent overdose shook him to his core. That was just the beginning. Not only did he recover, he went into ministry and now travels to prisons preaching the freedom of Christ to men who thought they were beyond redemption. And when Rachel spoke, she said this with trembling lips, God was working when I saw nothing. He didn't need to announce what he was doing. He just needed me to trust that he hadn't stopped. That's the power of faith in silence. That's what it means to believe when belief has no evidence. So if you're in that quiet season, if you've been walking through August wondering why the voice of God has grown faint, wondering why your prayers seem to echo in an empty room, know this: the silence is not rejection, it's construction. God builds in the quiet. He lays foundations where no one sees. He aligns connections in the invisible realm. He softens hearts, opens pathways, and rearranges outcomes without broadcasting it. And sometimes the silence is for your benefit. If he showed you everything too soon, you might sabotage it in fear. If he gave you the full picture, your flesh might try to take control. But when he keeps it hidden, it forces you to let go of control. It teaches you to wait, not passively, but expectantly. Because waiting in faith is not inactivity, it's spiritual warfare. It is the declaration that you trust the author even when you can't see the script. And trust me, when the silence finally breaks, it will all make sense. The door will swing open and you'll see how every quiet moment was loaded with divine purpose. So lift your head, not because you've heard a new word, but because others, you believe the old one still stands. Worship louder in the silence than you did in the celebration. Praise him not because of what you feel, but because of who he is. Your silence is not your ending. It is your setup. Heaven has not forgotten you. Angels are still on assignment. Promises are still in motion. And just like the dawn always follows the longest night, your breakthrough is coming, not in chaos, but out of the quiet. Because before resurrection, there is silence. Before the shift, there is stillness. Before the suddenly, there is the season of God's not yet. And it's in that not yet that your faith is proven, your roots go deep, and your destiny takes form. Don't fear the silence, embrace it. Because it's only a matter of time before God breaks it with glory. There are moments in life when everything seems disjointed. Your prayers feel unanswered, your relationships fractured, your dreams delayed, and your soul questions, is anything truly coming together? But heaven would have you know this as ours. Alignment does not begin in the visible, it begins in the invisible. Long before you see the pieces fit. God has already been arranging the puzzle. Just because you can't see the whole picture doesn't mean the picture isn't being formed. Divine alignment is rarely loud, never chaotic, and often disguised in ordinary, unremarkable moments. But when it happens, when it all begins to converge, you'll look back and realize that everything had a purpose. The closed doors weren't denials, they were diversions toward better ones. The missed connections weren't failures, they were filters. The heartbreaks weren't endings, they were divine redirections. What seemed scattered is now being gathered. What felt random is now revealing a rhythm. August is not a month of confusion. It is a month of convergence, as everything that has felt out of place, disconnected, or delayed is coming into alignment. Not by your hand, but by the sovereign hand of the one who sees the end from the beginning and orchestrates both. This is exactly what we see in the story of Ruth. Here is a young widow, crushed by loss, walking away from everything she has ever known. Her home, her comfort, her familiar gods, clinging to Naomi with nothing but a whisper of faith. No angel appeared to her, no prophetic word was given, no voice from heaven explained what was next. And yet, step by step, she walked into alignment. What seemed like a poor decision, gleaning in a field just to survive, was actually divine positioning. What looked like survival mode was strategic movement. Because Boaz, the man who would not only redeem her, but connect her to the lineage of the Messiah, was waiting on the other side of that obedience. Ruth didn't need to chase the plan. She just needed to move with God's leading. And as she moved, as everything aligned as the provision, the connection, the restoration, the favor, it all came into order, not because she fought for it, but because she followed the Spirit's unseen guidance. That is the kind of alignment God is bringing in your life in this very hour. You may not have clarity, but if you have faith and take the next step in trust, you are walking into alignment. You are not lost. You are not forgotten. You are not off course. You are exactly where He needs you to be for the digest next piece to fall into place. I remember a young man named Isaiah who spent 6 years applying for jobs in his field after graduation. He was qualified, passionate, and persistent, but no doors opened. His classmates were being hired left and right while he kept getting rejection letters. Frustrated and exhausted, he took a temporary job at a coffee shop just to make ends meet. He felt like a failure. He questioned whether he misheard God about his calling. But one afternoon, as he served a customer, they struck up a casual conversation about leadership and innovation. What he didn't know was that the customer was the CEO of a growing tech company who had been quietly praying for someone with his exact skill set and heart. Within a week, Isaiah was sitting in that CEO's office with an offer in his hand, double the pay of any position he had previously applied for, in a company that aligned perfectly with his values and vision. And here's the beauty of it. Had he gotten any of the earlier jobs he prayed for, he would have as never been available for the one that was truly his. That's what alignment looks like. It doesn't always feel like progress, but it always results in purpose. The waiting wasn't wasted. It was weaving something only heaven could orchestrate. And that's what you must understand about August. This isn't just a transition of weeks or weather. It's a holy invitation to walk into divine alignment. God is taking the broken fragments of your past, the scattered hopes of your present, and the hidden promises for your future, and He's beginning to weave them together into one seamless narrative of redemption. You don't need to force it. You don't need to manufacture the outcome. Your job is not to pull the strings. Your job is to stay surrendered to the hand that holds the thread. This is the month where relationships will suddenly make sense, where the ones who walked away will be seen as a gift, and the ones who remain will prove their divine connection. This is the month where resources will begin to flow, not from your striving, but from favor. This is the month where clarity will come, not as a loud announcement, but as a gentle unfolding of what was always meant to be. What felt like pieces will become a picture. What seemed confusing will become clear. What was once scattered will now be set in order. But alignment doesn't come without obedience. Ruth aligned because she moved in humility. Isaiah aligned because he remained faithful in small things. And you will align as you keep saying yes, even when you don't understand the why. That job that doesn't seem significant might be a gate to something greater. That connection you're tempted to overlook might be a divine link. That inconvenience might actually be an intervention. Nothing is wasted when it's surrendered to God. He is the master of convergence, the God of patterns, the one who makes rivers in the desert and roads in the wilderness. And he has not abandoned the map. He's guiding you even now. If you could see what he sees, you'd stop questioning and start praising. If you knew what was about to align, you'd stop worrying and start worshiping. Because August is not the end of your confusion, it's the beginning of your eyes' clarity. So lift up your eyes and shake off the despair. The alignment has already begun. Heaven has shifted things in motion. God has not just seen your faith, he's honored it. Every obedient step, every sacrifice made in silence, every act of faithfulness when no one was watching, it's all culminating now. The things you've been praying for, the direction you've been searching for, the answers that have seemed so far out of reach, they are being drawn to you in this season, not by effort, but by his divine appointment, because you were never walking alone. You were walking toward alignment. And now, in August, what you couldn't piece together is coming together in his perfect time. It's not your striving that brings alignment, it's your surrender. So stand still and watch the master weaver work. The threads are being pulled. The pieces are shifting. The alignment is here, Doc Sec. You've been convinced by the noise of the enemy that you're too late, that you've missed your moment, that you're disqualified by your past, and that the weight of failure has knocked you off the path of purpose. But that is a lie from the pit of hell, and it's time to silence it with the truth of heaven. You are not walking into failure. You are walking into fulfillment. Ties, the pain, the broken pieces, the years that seemed lost, they were not the end of the story. They were the soil where your destiny was being planted. And now, in this appointed time, God is calling forth a harvest, not because you did everything perfectly, but because he is faithful even when you are not. You didn't miss it. You didn't ruin it. You are not too far behind. You are exactly where he needs you to be for the miracle that was time before you were born. The fulfillment of what he spoke over your life is not hanging by a thread. It's anchored in eternity. But here's the part many miss. Fulfillment doesn't come without obedience. You can't just wait passively for destiny to knock on your door. You must step forward in faith, even when everything around you tells you to sit back in fear. That business idea you've been carrying in your spirit, it's time to begin. That person God told you to forgive, but you've avoided, it's time to release. That prompting to serve, to give, to sow, to speak, it's time to act. Because Azra obedience is the activation key. God's promises are not void, but they are voice activated, called into being when his people respond in faith. Think of Peter in the storm. The winds were howling, the sea was raging, and Jesus was standing on the water. Peter could have stayed in the boat where it was safe. But the miracle only met him when he stepped out in obedience. His foot touched the impossible, and the laws of nature bent to the command of Christ. That's what obedience does. It makes the impossible submit to heaven's agenda. And the same is true in your life. You've been waiting for God to move, but God's been waiting for you to obey. There was a woman named Elena I met during a ministry gathering who had carried the vision of writing a book for years, a story of redemption from abuse and addiction that could break chains for thousands. She had the outlines, the titles, the themes, all sitting in a dusty journal. But fear whispered that she wasn't good enough, not educated enough, not spiritual enough, so she waited. One night, while praying, she heard God say, "Start writing today." It's already prepared. With trembling hands, she opened her laptop and typed the first line. 6 months later, the book was complete. A year after that, it was picked up by a Christian publisher and translated into 4 languages. But it didn't start with a contract or a breakthrough. It started with Oz obedience. She told me God had the fulfillment ready, but he needed me to move so the door could open. That is exactly where many people are right now. Not on the brink of disaster, but on the brink of destiny, if only they will obey. Because fulfillment is not just about arrival. It's about agreement. God has declared his promise, but your obedience is what partners with it and brings it to life. But don't think for a second that this activation happens in a vacuum. When you start to obey, when you begin to rise, when you take even one step toward purpose, that's what all of creation responds. That's what Romans 8:22 speaks of when it says, "The whole creation has been groaning as in the pains of childbirth. The earth itself groans, not in pain without purpose, but in anticipation of the revealing of the sons and daughters of God." That means the shaking you feel, the tension in the atmosphere, the spiritual pressure mounting over your life right now. It's not a sign of collapse. It's a sign of ours birthing. The ground is rumbling because the heavens are moving. The turbulence you sense isn't chaos, it's convergence. The enemy wants you to think that the pressure means you're under attack, but in reality, it means you're under construction. about to walk through the very gate that your obedience unlocked. Look at Paul and Silas in that prison cell. Shackled, beaten, locked in the inner cell. Yet instead of panic, they chose praise. And as they lifted their voices in obedience to worship, the earth itself responded. The prison began to shake. Chains broke. Doors flung open, not just for them, but for every prisoner around them. That's the power of spiritual obedience. It causes the natural world to align with the will of heaven. It breaks what was never meant to bind you. And when that happens, your freedom becomes a catalyst for others. So if your world has felt unstable, if everything has started shaking, if the ground beneath you feels uncertain, don't panic. Prophetic trimmers always precede divine fulfillment. You are not falling apart. You are falling into alignment. The earth groans not for destruction, but for delivery. And when heaven begins to move, the earth cannot stay still. That stirring you feel inside, that's the echo of eternity. It's God telling you that your obedience has set something in motion far greater than you can see. So don't stop now. Don't go back to safety. Don't hide behind fear. You've already come too far. You've already sound too much, and you're too close to turn around. God is not just about to bless you. He's about to fulfill through you the very thing he spoke over your life. If you were formed, you are not entering failure. You are entering fulfillment. You are not activating by striving. You are activating through obedience. And the ground that shakes beneath you isn't caving in. It's making way for the asked glory of the Lord to be revealed in your life. This is the moment you were made for. This is the hour of release. Heaven is moving. The earth is groaning. And you are about to step into the very thing God said was always planned. You were born for such a time as this. August was not waiting on the weather. It was waiting on you. The plans of God are not delayed. They're perfectly on time. So rise up, child of the Most High. Shake off the dust of the past. Put on the garments of praise. And walk into this month knowing he has already gone before you. He has already made a way. He has already declared it. It's planned. Now move because heaven has already said yes. This is not just August. This is divine activation.